Hello again. Today I wanted to kick off my Curse of Strahd campaign diaries by talking about my session 0 and how I ran that. So before we go, I just wanted to mention that this will have a lot of spoilers for the Curse of Strahd adventure for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. So the goal that I wanted to have with the session 0 is to make sure everybody was coming together at the table with a good and strong idea of what the game would entail, the themes it would involve, and what types of storyline we would be kind of playing with. I also wanted to give them a bit of background information where I could, and also learn about their characters as the DM, so I could take that and use that to my knowledge when I'm running and to adjust things as I needed to. So the first thing I did before I started running it is I went and found, I forgot where it was online, but it is a quiz you can send to your players that has them go through things that are involved with the horror genre that people do not want in the game. There's things that it gives you options to allow the players to respond to it and say, some of these things are okay if they're sprinkled in, but I don't really like them that much, and these things are a hard no. And that was really important to me because I know the adventure has a lot of graphic, somewhat, and violent or overall creepiness, and I didn't want to put people off with that. And I just wanted to know what not to use to kind of freak them out. Because it talks about it in the beginning of the book. It talks about the uses of horror and atmosphere and things like that. But these ones are ones that some of my players were like, no way, I do not want this. And that way, that awkward conversation or awkward encounter didn't come up in the future or cause them any discomfort that I didn't want them to happen. Because sometimes you kind of want them to be a bit discomforted with horror, but in this case, these were hard no's for me. So now for the actual session, I like session zeros, but I also don't like them. The main reason I don't like them is that they can be kind of long and drawn out, and nothing really happens. Like, you kind of talk about characters, and it's fun, and it's nice to kind of get to meet everybody, but nothing really happens. And I like things to happen every game. I don't know. I like to keep things progressing forward and moving along. Otherwise, it becomes too stagnant and nothing really happens. So I took my idea from another game that I ran, which was Blades in the Dark. And in that system, I had an introduction, sort of like a session 0 that I could use at a convention. And so what I did is it was like a live, dynamic story that was kind of happening, where there was a scene that was set, there was action that was happening, and I would ask the players questions about things, and then we would kind of do character creation and crew creation in that game, like that. And so I kind of wanted it to be something similar for this session 0. So I decided to use one of the hooks provided in the adventure, where the characters are having dinner at a noblewoman's home, and I kind of set it up like it's a movie. There, the camera moves around and it describes the scene. And what I did is that I had her, the NPC, interact with the characters directly and ask them questions um, that she would have known of them, because they are third level. I decided to start them at third level as well, because they have all played the game before and kind of know what they're doing. So I kind of skipped first and second level. So another thing that I'm trying to utilize in all of my games for Curse of Strahd is to utilize the power of leading questions, because I find, myself included, that a lot of us have trouble with the roleplay aspect, like just jumping into it. It's kind of tough for us sometimes. I'm finding, like, as a group, it's kind of a thing we're all kind of working on. And so I'm trying to use leading direct in character questions to kind of bring them into the story, or even out of character questions that I can kind of use to start a discussion. And I've been finding those have been very valuable so far. And what I used in the session 0 is I had the Duchess Morwen of Daggerford, which is the NPC that you begin with, kind of ask them questions about their lives. What were some of them? Like, how close are you to your elven heritage? Do you like your other sibling? Have you always been this way? How is your training? Things like that, that the character and the player would want to share and that they would know. And then as they're answering, I would jot down the notes that I could use for the future, of so that I wouldn't have to read through a bunch of backstories. I could just get the main bullet points that I would need to know. I also used her to ask group questions to kind of build a collective identity for the group. And one of those, for example, is who is your character, and who are they connected to? Why is your character an adventurer? What do they personally seek as kind of an individual goal? And why do you think you're all together right now? Or what brought you here? Things like that. So, because my friends had character ideas already set out and they kind of had a pretty good grasp on who they were, but it was more so building those connections and building that unity so that we wouldn't have to do that later on through play. So through this dinner time scene, they were able to kind of describe their characters, talk about them a little bit, both in and out of character, and I'm really trying to bring that in character voice out and give them a chance to share as well, because they all made some very interesting people that were going to be participating in this adventure. And it was also a good way for me to understand what their motivations are and what the important things are that they value. Now, following this scene, I kind of proceeded to somewhat kind of narrate what was going on, because it is a session 0, so there's not really going to be any rolling per se or any play. It's going to be more describing and role play and talking. And so they proceeded to go along with the adventure hook, where they would go to talk to the Vistani at the edge of the town and convince them to leave, which they hear a story about their land, and it kind of draws them into the story, and it gives them a bit of background as to where they're going and where they're adventuring. And then through that, we sort of finished it off there. It was a very brief session, but I felt this was a very positive start, because they were able to talk in character and describe their thoughts and feelings and things like that. It was a good little introduction to the world and the themes, and I was able to get to know their characters and kind of figure out what they value, and they were able to see each other as well to kind of get that collective group going before jumping into the game full throttle. So this was the explanation diary for my session 0 that I ran for this campaign. So please let me know what you think of it. These are going to be very brief, very straightforward, just me chatting about the campaign and the session and how it went. Pretty soon I will recap and talk about the first session and what happened there, and kind of my thoughts on that. So I hope you enjoy. Please leave a comment and have yourself a great time out there.